Welcome to the Project Core Professional Development modules. Project Core is being conducted by the Center for Literacy and Disability Studies, a unit in the Department of Allied Health Sciences at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. This module, Teaching Communication During Academics, Independent Writing, will discuss how to support interaction and teach communication as students select topics, write, and share their work during independent writing. The students participating in Project Core are beginning communicators. As we discussed in other modules, these students are not yet able to use speech, signs, or symbols to meet all of their communication needs. This means they also struggle with the letters of the alphabet and are unlikely to be writers. Then why does independent writing matter? Writing matters because it ultimately provides a means of unlimited expression. Learning to communicate with symbols representing core vocabulary is important because it gets students communicating as quickly as possible, but core does not provide access to unlimited expression. The 26 letters of the alphabet are the only symbols that support unlimited expression. We want to get students communicating as quickly as possible using the symbols that represent core vocabulary, but we're also going to start them down the path toward writing from the very beginning. During independent writing, we are helping students learn to translate thoughts into print or braille. When we encourage beginners to start to explore letters and words in independent writing, we create a meaningful context to teach communication. Even when students seem to randomly scribble or select letters, they are producing a text we can talk about. This is true for beginning writers of all ages and abilities. The first step is to make sure everyone has a pencil. Many students with significant disabilities will need something other than a standard pencil when they start writing. Some might use keyboards. Others will require alternate access to the 26 letters of the alphabet. You may present letters one at a time, like this teacher does. She shows the student a letter, points to it, and says, "Does what you want to write have the letter A?" Then he indicates yes or no in response. If he indicates yes, she writes the letter. If he indicates no, she shows him the next letter, points to it, and says, "Does what you want to write have the letter B?" And they continue. You might present letters in groups like this teacher. She uses a flashlight to point to letters one at a time, left to right. As she points to the letter, she says its name. The student has two switches. The switch on the left side of his head says, "Next one, please." The switch on the right side says, "That's the one I want." In this way, he directs his teacher to tell him the name of each letter and then directs her to write the letters he'd like. These are just a couple of the available options for alternate ways of providing access to the 26 letters of the alphabet. If you have students who cannot write with a pencil, pen, or standard keyboard, complete the module called Writing with Alternate Pencils at dlmpd.com. You'll also find links to files you can download to make alternate pencils for your students. Whether your students use a conventional pencil, keyboard, or an alternate pencil, they don't need to know how to use it to get started. They don't even need to know the letters of the alphabet to get started. These are things they will learn over time. Once everyone has a pencil, the next step is to help students learn that writing is about communication. Start by asking students to select a topic to write about. A known topic helps adults and students have meaning-based interactions, both before and after writing. Topics can include a favorite activity, a person, a personal experience, or anything else that interests the student. Remember, student interest is the key. Make sure to present potential topics in a format that sparks students' interest and their memory. This teacher took photos representing people, places, and events that were familiar to her students. She organized the photos into categories and bound them with rings so she could easily add or remove photos over time. Another way of presenting topics is to use remnants or objects from experiences. Examples of remnants might be a ticket from a movie the student saw, a straw from a stop at a fast food restaurant, yarn scraps from a project in art class, or a favorite instrument from music class. You can also create lists of familiar subjects, places, or experiences. The growing list in one classroom included topics such as what I did yesterday, and more specific topics like horseback riding and an upcoming trip to the circus. We don't expect that students can read the list themselves, but they can learn to make a choice if the teacher reads each of the options one at a time and encourages the student to indicate when she hears the topic she wants. The teacher pointed to and read each item on this list. When the student indicated yes to Where's Bambi, the teacher repeated it while pointing to where on the student's universal core system. The teacher then repeated, where is Bambi? And pointed again to where on the student's universal core system. The teacher then paused and waited to give the student a chance to comment. When the student did nothing, the teacher added, that is a good topic, while pointing to good. Again, the teacher paused and waited. The student then pointed to look. The teacher repeated look by saying the word and pointing to the symbol. Then she added you and said, you look, while pointing to the symbols on the student's universal core system. The teacher then said, I can't wait to see what you write about Bambi, and pulled out the student's alternate pencil. After selecting a topic and communicating about it using the universal core vocabulary, it is time to write. Some students will quite literally use a pencil or a keyboard to write completely independently. Others will need an adult to write the letters they select. After the student makes marks on the paper, writes or selects letters, or actually writes words, the adult has to respond. Some students will be able to talk about their writing. In other cases, students will not be able to read or tell about what they have written. The challenge then is for the adult to respond to the writing. It is a challenge, but it provides one more opportunity to communicate with students using the universal core vocabulary. You can support students by providing feedback that connects their writing efforts and the topics they choose. In this example, the student selected a picture of a coffee maker when choosing a topic. He glued the picture to the page, then used a pencil to write a series of letter-like shapes and marks that are under the picture. His teacher responded by using the universal core to point to "Can I?" as she asked, "Can I look?" The student pulled the paper away from the teacher, and the teacher said, "Oh, not yet," as she pointed to not. When the student pointed to not, the teacher said, "Not. I will not look," and pointed to the symbols not and look. Then the teacher asked, "Can you write more?" and pointed to more. The student added more. When the student stopped again, the teacher pointed to the first letter under the picture and said, "You wrote an M." Then she pointed to the symbols for I can on the student's universal core system while saying, "I can use M to write mug." Then she said the name of each letter as she wrote M-U-G on a piece of paper. Finally, the teacher said, "Make coffee in a mug," while pointing to the symbols for make and in on the student's universal core system. This teacher made a meaningful connection between the topic and the letters she could read on the page. Making those connections can take some effort, but it is important to avoid feedback that is not helpful. For instance, generic feedback such as "good job" or "good writing" doesn't help students know what they did that was good. A focus on quantity or how much the student wrote may lead the student to believe the goal is to write or select lots of letters instead of focusing on meaningful communication. Since emergent writers have a lot to figure out, you also want to avoid focusing on fixing what the student wrote. At this stage of writing, our job is to give students feedback that focuses on writing to convey meaning about the selected topic.